The lifeless body of a mother and son lay just feet away from each other on Blue Hill Road last night, the victims of a double homicide. The victims are Bridget Williams, 42, and her 22-year-old son, Rashad Williams. Now, distraught sister and aunt of the victims, Portia Williams, told us how she learned of the death of her sister and nephew.
My daughter boyfriend called her, and said Bridget and Shad on Blue Road dead. I tell him no, I don't believe it. I try calling calling the house to find out. We couldn't get through. Apparently, when we was coming, my niece called my daughter and tell us that Bridget and the little boy on Blue Road dead like a dog. I couldn't believe it.
Now, Williams added that the mother and son were never far from each other and lived together in a home on Brome Street. Police are appealing for anyone with information to contact them. Meantime, they're questioning 3 men from Montel Heights in connection with the killings. Well, voters cast ballots in constituencies in eastern New Providence, among them the closely contested seats of Elizabeth, as well as the F&M stronghold of Montague and St. Anne's. Our Giovanni Stewart tells us that in all areas the voter turnout was extremely good and international observers were on hand to observe the process.
We had the east side on lock this morning where the voting process was relatively smooth, but historic in a way you wouldn't imagine. 4,750 voters are registered in the Elizabeth constituency, a race to watch following the hotly contested 2010 by-election that saw PLP incumbent Ryan Pinder and the F&M's Dr. Dwayne Sands face off. This time, they're joined by the DNA's Charlene Paul. Returning officer Elizabeth Kiju says the voting process at the Thelma Gibson Primary School was orderly but slow at times.
If there are only 2 booths, it can only be 2 voters at a time. So we can only call another one in when one of them comes out. In addition to that, we do not have control over how long a voter takes to vote.
And there was strong voter participation at St. Andrew's School in Yamacraw, where PLP incumbent Melanie Griffin, the F&M's Dion Folks, and DNA newcomer Maurice Smith were put to the test. 4,933 voters are registered, including these first-time voters who outlined their expectations.
What will make me choose A or B is the type of leader quality I think the person carries. If I believe they are a strong leader, I'll honestly vote for them. If I don't think it's the right time for them, I honestly won't.
Education, increasing scholarships is something that people are always looking for, helping the less fortunate.
In the heart of Fox Hill, voters lined up at the Sandilands Primary School. A maximum of 4,848 registered there, where the fight is between PLP incumbent Fred Mitchell and newcomers, the F&M's Chanel Ferguson and the DNA's Kendall Smith. On hand was CARICOM election observer Ferdinand Welzane, who says the Bahamas' process met the world standard.
Everything looks okay. People are ready to vote, and according to my experience, things are going cool. Things are going smooth.
It was the St. Anne's constituency that provided the biggest surprise of the day. An F&M seat last time, voters cast their ballots at St. Anne's High School for one of 3 new political hopefuls: the F&M's Hubert Chipman, the PLP's Gregory Burrows, and the DNA's Prince Smith. Up to 4,803 people were eligible, but it was the picture of F&M supporter Sir Derwood Knowles and Obi Pinling, the eldest child of former PLP leader and Prime Minister Sir Lyndon Pinling, that stole the show.
Our message is to appeal to the general public, PLP, F&M, DNA. The election will be over, but we got to live together.
We've heard all the political leaders ask the public to, be calm and support your party with all the vigilance that you want, but still we have to live together as Bahamians, which we all are.
Well, the Progressive Liberal Party's Dr. Bernard Nottage had the support of the masses in his Bain and Grandstown constituency, and in just a few days he will be sworn in as the Member of Parliament there. Our Carla Palmer tells us about his plans for the area.
While this win marks his 2nd consecutive representing the Bains and Grandstown constituency, Bernard Nottage is among the longest-serving members of Parliament, with almost 40 years.
Yes.
Why do you continue to do what you do? Why are you staying in politics?
Because there's a need to provide Bahamians with opportunities that we believe have escaped them, particularly over the last 5 years, and determined that before I die, we change the condition of the people I represent.
Mr. Nottage is hoping to implement changes he describes as necessary. And he says he's energetic and committed enough to implement his plans, which include enhancements in the areas of education, health, the creation of jobs, and more.
The community generally is environmentally filthy. It needs to be cleaned up. 3, we need to improve the housing, particularly for the elderly. 4, we need to create more opportunities for people to go into businesses, etc. We need more youth activities. Now, I've been the Member of Parliament for 5 years, and you might say, well, why hasn't that been done? It's difficult. When we become the government, I would be better positioned to be able to implement some of the changes that I think are necessary.
Carla Palmer, ZNS News.
Welcome to tonight's edition of the Business Beat, sponsored by Royal Fidelity. Good evening, Bahamas. I'm Tues. Let's take a look at what's making business news today.
The 2012 general elections top business news. The United Kingdom's Proactive Investors Online reports that Bahamas petroleum shares shot up over 20% following Monday's news that Perry Christie won the election. The article noted that the outcome has buoyed investors because former Prime Minister Hubert Ingraham reportedly had a hardline stance on oil exploration. According to the online report, the Progressive Liberal Party is believed to be more supportive of oil exploration. BTC management congratulating new Prime Minister Perry Christie and the Progressive Liberal Party on their victory at the polls on Monday. The BTC release claims that once again, the people of the Bahamas provided an example to the world of how to uphold the principles of democracy in a participatory and peaceful manner. BTC management looks forward to a continued positive relationship with the new government as all colleagues work to provide stellar telecommunications and world-class customer care for all Bahamians. In international business, Australia has said it will return to a budget surplus in the fiscal year 2012-2013. Australian Treasurer Wayne Swan outlined a budget on Tuesday that aims to be in credit by 1.5 billion Australian dollars. Defense spending will be cut and a rise in overseas aid will be deferred. Remember, you can send us an email or join us on www.znsbahamas.com or become our friend on ZNS's official Facebook page.
And that will end tonight's edition of the Business Beat, sponsored by Royal Fidelity. I'm Tues. Thanks so much for watching.
It's time for today's Doctor's Hospital health tip. Cut fat, protect your colon. Cheeseburgers and ice cream. We love to eat them even though they clog our arteries and pad our bellies, but here's one more good reason to cut back: cancer of the small intestine. A large long-term study showed that high intakes of saturated fat, that's the kind found mainly in dairy and other animal-based foods, may bump up the risk of this rare but particularly dangerous form of cancer. Saturated fat may increase the risk for this cancer because of the bile acids your body uses to digest the fat. These acids can cause oxidative stress and subsequent cancer-causing damage to the DNA in the small intestine. And cancer of the small intestine may be extra hazardous because it could jack up the risk of other forms of cancer, including colon and rectal cancers. In the study, saturated fat from dairy seemed particularly harmful. However, other research has shown that high calcium intake may be protective of your colon. So choose low-fat or non-fat dairy products and think about a calcium supplement if you don't routinely get enough. Eating too much red meat can raise your risk for colon cancer and a host of other diseases.
Well, it's time now for a check of what's coming up in sports. Jonathan, what you got for us?
Well, on the 17 girls soccer team holding their own last night at the final match of the CONCACAF World Cup qualifier, so we'll have that coming up after the break.
All right, stay tuned. Sports is straight ahead.